Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program, and let your friends know, well, where the conversation is taking place. Also, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. And in both cases, make sure you hit the notification button. Also, visit FPCgear.com. That's FPCgear.com. It's the place to go to find all sorts of Pro 2A swag. All the cool kids are wearing this stuff. We're talking t-shirts, coffee mugs, hoodies. Okay, maybe they're not wearing the coffee mugs, but they've got the coffee mugs. But you guys need to check it out. It is the stuff. And the great thing is, every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for a right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's FPCgear.com. All right. Wanted to talk with you guys today because, we keep hearing this number banted around, this idea, this statistic that, quote unquote, 90% of people support the idea of background checks. But the problem is that most people have absolutely no idea what you're talking about when you talk about universal background checks and what exactly it means. So we figured we would do a show, obviously, to talk about universal background checks and exactly what they are and what the issues are. Now, as you know, we have a crack both research and legal team that's done a lot of research on a number of different topics, and one of the white papers that they've done has been on this very topic. So with that, I want to invite to the program our director, the Firearms Policy Coalition's Director of Legal Policy, Mr. Matt Larosiere. Matt, how are we doing today?
Hey, Craig, good to see you.
Excellent. All right, so do me a favor. Now, everybody, once again, you hear the statistic, 90% of the people out there want universal background checks. First of all, what do you think people think they mean? And then what do they actually mean when they say universal background checks?
Well, so first of all, those like 90% figures, they get thrown around a lot, as you've no doubt heard them. And they're like almost unequivocally garbage. So it all depends on how the survey is worded. You can get somebody to respond to a survey however you want. It's like if you ask a bunch of random people, well, do you think that people should be able to buy a semi-automatic firearm without any check as to their mental state, or blah blah blah? Then people are going to respond to that question differently. But then we've seen in states that had universal background checks on the ballot, which we'll get into what that really is in a second. Beforehand, there was public opinion polls in the state that said overwhelmingly, 80 to 90% of these people support this. And then they didn't pass the ballot, right? They either
funny how that happens,
defeated.
huh?
yeah, they were either completely defeated, and then the states where they did go through, they went through by the tiniest margin, like 2 percentage points. By
the way, just so people understand, keep in mind these are policies that, legislatures hire thousands of people to analyze the impact and how these things are going to be implemented. And then you, the voter, are expected to make the exact same policy decisions based on, the mail that you get or based on what you see on TV.
Right. Well, yeah, and the idea that any one person can be simultaneously competent in all the things they ask you to vote on is, that alone is an interesting proposition. So these things come through. They bill it as, this is common sense, right? This is a common sense safety thing. We just have to make sure we know that mentally ill, blah, 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 people aren't getting guns. Okay. Well, they're acting like we don't already exist in a system where buying a gun is incredibly regulated. They're pretending like it's the Wild West, that you can just go and pick up a gun wherever you want, whenever you want. What they're really talking about is that area of the law that the federal government is not allowed to touch. It's intra-states transfers between two private people. So no dealers, just like private people. If you and I lived in the same state, you and I engaging in a transfer. Things like me deciding to leave a firearm with a loved one if they feel like they're in danger. That's the type of thing. They're not talking about going out and that's what they're talking about. That narrow class of private individual transfers. That's the only thing that federal law doesn't, isn't allowed to touch, because the federal law, the NICS check, the 4473 that everybody's, most of our audience has probably filled out, they impose that on all federally licensed firearms dealers for every transfer that they do. Okay. So the federal government is not allowed to regulate activities that occur purely within a state's boundaries, and with no interstate character. It doesn't involve a federal agent or anything. They don't have any business regulating it. It's up to the states to regulate it, and thankfully, because they probably know it's a waste of time, and that it's only going to impact people's rights negatively, most states have decided to just leave that alone, because guess what? It's not a problem. Even back in the 90s, when they were implementing the NICS system as we know it today, they looked into crime guns and found that less than 1% of crime guns back then were purchased at gun shows, and the numbers are similar now. They're acting like there's a loophole, which is not a loophole. It's the way the law is designed, and it's on purpose. But they're acting like the fact that I can sell a gun to my brother, my sister, my friend, or give it to them, and that be legal. They think that that's like a social contagion that needs to be boxed off.
Well, exactly. One of the things that they barely note is that first of all, most firearms that are found in used in crimes are not obtained legally. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, like you just said, over 80% of all firearms transactions do in fact involve a background check.
Yeah, it's the reality we live in. That is the way it is. They're acting like that if we impose universal background checks, that we might maybe get to that, the thing that we're already living in. And guess what? The background check system is broken. It doesn't work. It has false negatives, but I'm more worried about the false positives. Right. If your local courthouse makes a mistake, you could spend the rest of your life, having to wait weeks to get every firearm transfer because you get delayed because they just didn't want to fix your file.
Right.
I've seen that happen to people.
Right. Plus, if you are actually found to be, if it's deemed that you are not allowed to purchase a firearm, I mean, in some cases, you could have law enforcement knocking on your door because you were someone who's prohibited from owning a firearm who attempted to purchase a firearm. Right.
And then some of these laws now that they're putting forth, they require, so like say, you go to get a background check and you fail the background check. And like we just said, there's a bunch of reasons you can fail it for it's a problem. It's not, it's a fault in the system. It's an error. You can fail the background check and it be an error with you never having done anything wrong. And there are states that are putting forth laws that require law enforcement to go and pay a visit to you after that happens. Is that a good idea? You have an unreliable machine that spits out bad data, and then you're going to tell people, tell the local police to, okay, take your guns and follow that bad data. That's stupid.
Well, it is definitely insane. Now, one of the things that I've always been concerned about, in particular when you start talking about background checks, is it being a kind of a backdoor way to register firearms.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the only way that these background check laws can have any effect, is if there's a firearm registry. And a lot of people believe that we have a firearms registry. We don't. It's federally illegal. And for good reason, too, because we know from history that whenever you register guns, confiscation comes at some point later on. And so it's federally illegal. The government is not allowed to maintain a list of who owns what weapons, for regular Title I weapons. If you're into cool guy stuff like machine guns and suppressors, well, sorry, you're out of luck. But yeah, generally, like, the feds are not allowed to keep track of regular Title I firearms like AR-15s, handguns, and stuff like that. So, look, there's hundreds of millions of these guns out there. And like I said, you and I are neighbors, and you're like, geez, I really like that Walther. That's really cool. And I'm like, you know what? You did a good job mowing my lawn. Here, and I hand it to you. right? I
Right.
mean, not that that would be our exact situation, but does that seem bad? That seems like a
Well,
pretty
what
wholesome interaction,
or no?
right?
How about this? How about someone that a coworker is dealing with a domestic
Right,
violence situation, and they've gone through, and they, like for example in California, you have to go through a background check in order to purchase. You have to go through a 10-day waiting period.
right.
Well, if you're in danger right now, you couldn't loan that individual a firearm. You couldn't give that individual a firearm to be able to use to protect themselves until they cleared their background check and were able to pick up their firearm.
And like, let's say you live in the middle of Utah, and the nearest dealer, is 45 minutes drive away. How good is that? But I'm saying, like, forget about
Well, there's
those.
parts of California that are like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, not just for an example. But I'm just saying, forgetting about those situations, because we know that when you write a generally applicable law that applies to everyone, it's gonna catch those situations where you have like a domestic abuser. It's gonna cause danger. But let's step back from that and just think about it on a moral scale, right? On a practical scale. So let's say we did the transfer. I gave you the gun. You did something I liked. Doesn't matter what it was, and I'm just like, here, this is yours. I know you're a good guy. I know you're not. I know you're allowed to own a firearm. I've seen you handle firearms. Here it is. That gun has never been, the feds have never known where that gun was. So I hand it to you. How are the feds going to know? There's no way for them to know that the transfer happened even after we require universal background checks.
Right.
So the only way it could be enforced, because what, they come to you, what's to stop you from saying, oh no, he gave it to me before the law passed, or I don't remember where I got that. What's that going to do? And then this is what they want to happen. They want this to happen, and then they want to have those results and say, we can't enforce this law because we don't know where the guns are. That's exactly the narrative you're going to have.
And that's exactly what they're saying in California, where we have background checks. They've actually found that the background check system in California has had absolutely no impact. Absolutely. It hasn't reduced suicides. It hasn't reduced firearm homicides. It hasn't reduced crimes or violence that have involved firearms at all. And, they don't want to admit that. But once again, the problem is once again, this is all part of we've got to do something.
Yeah.
And once again, in their doing something, they infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens while at the same time impacting criminals not at all.
Right. Yeah, like I was saying, and then as the law fails, as it fails in the future, what are they going to say? Are they going to say, oh, well, geez, I guess that new tool we got, it didn't work out? No, they're going to say, oh, well, it wasn't strong enough. We need registration, because otherwise, how are we going to give effect? How are we going to know that they didn't pass a background check if we don't know where the gun was last month, last week, or 5 minutes ago? That's what's going to happen. And so that's why I don't feel better when people are like, oh, well, this isn't going to do anything. Well, we've been watching gun restrictions not do anything for the past almost like 80 years. The NFA didn't do anything. It
doesn't.
It's created a weird market. So no, it's not going to do anything, and we know it's not going to do anything. But that's not going to change the narrative. They're going to say, "Oh well, yeah, you put a new tool in our really big toolbox, but we need it sharper, and also we need this other thing on top of that."
Right. It will always lead to something else: more information, more data, more. And when I say information and data, I mean on you, gun owners. I mean, They want to know who you are. They want to know where you are. They want to know how you live. They want to know what firearms you have, how much ammunition you have for that firearm. They want to know all of this so that when the time comes, they have both an excuse and they have the ability, because they know where they're at, to take your firearms. And that's the direction it's heading.
Not only that, but now with all this talk about predictive policing, and that word should give you some pause. They want to take that information, your firearms, your ammunition, stuff like that, and they want to compile that with what your income level is, which they already know all that, what your race is, who your friends are, who your neighbors are, and they're going to say, well, our computer says that guys who look like you, who hang out with people who look like you, are a problem.
Who are about your age, at your income level. I mean, you're a 20-something. You're a male of color. You become suspect number one.
Yeah, and I've read enough history books to not like that.
Exactly. You've read enough history books to realize there may be a problem here.
Right. Yeah. No. And it's like, oh, like exactly. And you hang out with other guys that kind of look like you, and we've noticed our computer says that when guys look like you hang out together, it's like, okay.
Right. And now you have guns and ammunition.
Right. Yeah. And then they're gonna say, oh, but look, we had all these warning signs. Look, our computer was beeping so hard, and people are gonna buy it. They're gonna say, oh, look, because it's like now they're doing something. They did something.
Well, and if you don't believe that's the case, I'll just show you to most gun control in California. In the 1870s, it was the Native Americans. It was back then they called them the Indians. In the 1920s, it was the Mexicans and the Chinese. In the 1960s, it was black people. I'm telling you, once again, they take these other things that they see as long as those people have guns. Well, then we need to restrict those people are dangerous. We need to restrict their ability to be able to own and possess firearms. And right now, well, those people are are basically any law-abiding citizen, because obviously they don't keep criminals from getting the guns.
Well, and they'll find some metrics. So like, people might say is, oh, well, you're worried about, being a person of color and this and that. We live in a different society now.
Right.
Come on.
Exactly.
They'll think of another word for it. Right? Urban youth, right?
They will think of another word for it.
Yeah.
Hey, where can folks find the policy paper that you guys did, the white paper?
Well, you just go to firearmspolicy.org. Everything's there. Check out it under policy, and we got a lot of good stuff coming out. So whenever you watch this video, it might be in the future, but scroll down, you'll find it there, and you'll also find all the other good stuff that we're putting out.
Excellent, Matt. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for coming on the program, and I'm sure we will have you on again soon to talk about more good stuff or bad stuff.
Hopefully,
that you're doing good stuff about.
Yeah, good stuff would be nice to talk about.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Take care, sir. All right, folks. Well, hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys liking and sharing the program, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them, or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.